week's episode of NextGen TCG. This is episode 13. I'm your co-host, Zach Browning, and we also have our lovely Tetra Ninja with us, Nick. How's it going, Nick?
I wouldn't say so much lovely, but I'm here. I'm here. This week, the episode title this week's is Maximizing Profits, because a lot of stuff is happening in the hobby right now. Some modern, some trophy cards, some special promos. So we got a jam-packed show. But always, we start the podcast talking about Zach's travel plans. Zach, where are you going?
Oh, man, it feels like we're always going somewhere every week. This first half of the year, we're so busy with travel. Like, when I look at the end of the year, there's like 4 or 5 places that are kind of coming up. And I almost just want to stay home. I want to stay home and just talk to you guys, and just kind of put it on pause for a little bit. But there's Denver Collecticon coming up soon that I know a lot of people are going to be going to. I'm actually going to skip that one. I have a friend's wedding I need to go to in Scottsdale, Arizona. So if you're in the Arizona area, and you know, if you probably see us out,
make a deal.
I'm like, hey, come see us out.
Slide into Zach DMs if you want to make a deal with him, because he'll be there.
Yeah. And I really appreciate everyone reaching out last episode about collections and such. So many just keep coming in, and I love every bit of it. Trying to stabilize kind of consistent inventory coming through the door. So if you are a supplier, if you have cards, feel free to reach out. But, you know, other kind of travel stuff coming up just to kind of get through all of it. There is Miami TCG convention coming up, I think the weekend after Denver. So this would be like October, like 13th, 14th, 15th, something like that. We can double check that time, but hopping into like all the different shows that are popping up. Like Collecticon was kind of the first one that like took that, you know, leap of faith to get the show set up, bring people in, this and that. And I almost kind of see them as like they have all the vendors that come in, all the 90s, they have all the voice actors. The Miami TCG convention has a lot of the Disney like Lorcana artists coming in. And so like there will be voice actors there, but like it's the first show that I've seen with like you can get like a Mufasa card with like a Mufasa on it. Like that sounds crazy, right?
Let's not talk about Mufasa, man.
Mufasa?
No, we can't. I can't. That movie brings up too many feels for me.
That's man.
It's the Bambi thing all over again. But so let's move on from Mufasa. All right. So we have Miami TCG. You also have Legends Expo. What's that all about?
So that's going to be in December. Charlie, a good friend of mine, initially was going to have a convention like a year ago or so, or a couple years ago, and then COVID happened. And so another good friend of mine, Chris DiChiara, is kind of took over the convention, and he's bringing in some actual Pokemon artists. So Midori Hirata and then Saitao, the Saitao that had already come to the U.S. I know there's a couple Saitaos out there. They're going to be there in person doing some of their original work. And so they are not signing Pokemon cards, but it's one of the few events you can go to that's not like a Pokemon regionals or something. That's actually kind of a separate event that's going to have literally like Pokemon artists there. And kind of the cool fun fact that I think some people don't realize is even though they're not going to sign Pokemon cards, and even though like they have their original art, they will like do illustrations of like non-Japanese IP. And so like you could have like a Marvel character, and they'll like Harada will literally sketch like an Iron Man for you, and it'll be really cool because she's like a legit artist. And so I know they had some Harry Potter sketches and some kind of crazy like Shikishis and stuff. So I think I'll definitely be at that one, and probably I still got to brainstorm a little bit, but I think that'd be sick to get some of that stuff done.
Can you get them to draw you a Van Gogh?
Oh man, well,
we'll get to that a little bit later, because that's a hot topic item right now. But we'll finish off with your travel plans, and then you have another Collecticon, obviously, that you're not going to.
Collecticon Houston, that is early November. I'm on the fence about that one. I'm leaning towards going just because a few friends from overseas are going to come in, and one of them has a very, very special birthday. So there'll probably be some festivities at night and things that you never really get to see everyone at every event you go to. So when you hear of a few friends going to one, I feel like everyone kind of makes an effort to show up. So I think Houston Collecticon would be another really good event to go to.
Is it the Big 21?
Oh, man, if it was 21, I'd probably be in trouble, man. I feel like 21 is probably a little too low to be going these days. But it's the big 3-0 from one of our happily married friends. And so we'll be celebrating a big birthday for her.
I don't know. I hit 3-0. It wasn't a huge deal. You haven't hit 3-0 yet, right? or have
Oh,
you?
dude, I'm over 30, man.
Oh, you're over 30? I don't know. I don't just like gender, I don't assume people's age, right? It's not a safe play, but yeah, 30 just comes and goes. Do you know what? Like 25. It was 25 to me was a big deal. I'm
Yeah,
just like I was like 25, I have reached my peak in terms of physical peak, and from now on it's just a downward slope and I'm just slowly dying after I hit 25. So yeah, that 25 was the depressing year for myself. But
dude.
anyways,
I love 25, 26. I was like New York City, like just enjoying life, like fresh as could be. And I feel like I got out like a lot of like the clubby, like bar, like kind of years, like during that time. And then basically once I left New York, it was like just focus on Pokemon. And it's like just been that way ever since. So, um,
yeah, it's I never like I wasn't huge into the bar scene, but just like now when I think about it, I'm way too tired. Thinking about it makes me tired. I'm like an old soul. I'm a very old soul. But anyways, all right. So let's move into market trends. And surprising you guys this week, we're actually going to start off with some modern. We're gonna talk modern today, guys. I know everyone thinks that both of us are modern haters and vintage lovers, but I like the modern. I like what's going on, what's coming out, rolling off the line these days. So let's start off with a less exclusive item. Just Pokemon 151 launched this past week. Pretty good reception. I think anytime you have like the original 151 Pokemon, everyone knows the original 151 Pokemon. I was actually kind of like on the fence with what my card of the week was. I actually changed at the last second because I wanted to kind of stick with that 151 theme. But maybe I'll do a bonus card. Maybe I'll do a bonus card. I'll think about it. What do you got for me?
I just realized I had a 151 box next to me. And it's
Ah,
Japanese, it's Japanese, but I figured, just show it up with the theme. I mean, I think there's so many lessons to learn over the years with modern and different things that come out. Like the best time to buy any cards for 151 is going to be within these first couple weeks of release if you're trying to build a position or get some sort of quantity. Now, sometimes like the prices will be super high, like on the Charizards or like the hit cards, this or that. But like I'll give you an example because everyone's like, oh, just wait like 6 months and the prices will dip down because that's what it was for like Darkness Ablaze, or like some of those other cards. But like if you look at the Snorlax promo, and a lot of people are like, oh, why is the Snorlax a promo, or why is the Mew a promo? I want to pull the Mew out. Like that Snorlax promo is like $1 or like less, like on TCG Player, and you could literally go and get like 50 of those. And it's like, is that card going to be $1 in 6 months or a year? And so I know some people get into the investing, this and that. And I think it's a cool looking promo, but like the only time you're going to be able to get quantity like that, that's like packed fresh and not played and not beat up and not sifted through, like is going to be that release weekend or the week after, because everyone's selling them. They're like, they've already committed in their head they're going to sell it. It's already like you're just getting them right out the door. So any lessons like that you may have learned?
just on the topic of Snorlax, really quickly. Very sneaky popular species that no one really thinks about when they think about popular species. Some of my favorite ones. I recently like the staff one that's come out recently, where it's kind of like in the air doing body slam. But I probably would think my favorite Snorlax would be the rocket staff one. You know that one?
Ooh,
Yeah.
rocket staff.
Yeah,
Oh
it may
man.
not be Rocket. But it's a staff Snorlax. It was the first staff Snorlax. It's kind of doing like a shadow ball, but it's like laying against a tree. I'll do a picture
Yeah.
here. But I think that one's my favorite Snorlax in the entire hobby.
I,
You got one?
I remember there was like a Legends pack, and I used to have some of those sealed, like the staff ones, and then they shot up in price, and then like I just haven't like seen one for years. But I remember there's so many cool Snorlaxes, like when Tag Team came out, and they had like the Tag Team Snorlax. I had a couple of those that were really cool, and then like I bought those because I thought those Tag Team cards were just good looking. And the next thing you know, like you look this year, you try to buy them, and it's like, oh, why do these things cost so much? It's like everyone loves him. So no, there's a lot of good Snorlax. Anytime he's eating something, it's kind of true to his character.
I think it's just like its attitude resonates with a lot of people. It's just the fact that it's just always sleeping, sleeping and eating it is my spirit animal. I love being a Snorlax. So yeah, just overall thoughts on 151. I'm kind of cheesed that there's not a traditional booster box in English for it. I think the only way you can just purely buy booster packs is in like a 6-pack at the moment. They didn't do the traditional booster boxes, which is that's when you know Pokemon knows what they have is gonna be super popular, and they just like gonna milk you for all the money that they possibly can. So that kind of irked me a little bit. I hadn't picked up any sealed product of it quite yet, but I will eventually. And then obviously we have just in terms of travel plans, we like I said in the last episode, we plan to open up a box of 151 while we're at Toronto Regionals at the end of October.
That'd be pretty cool. And, I think Pokemon's trying to stick to like the special set release where, they kind of have their traditional sets throughout the year. And the special set, it like has a different number of packs in the ETB. And it's like maybe there's something with the process there where if you made a booster box, maybe they had to use other factory lines or, I don't know. But them coming out with like the 6-pack thing, it kind of says like, hey, we know you just want the packs and we want to give you some way to do it. But at the same time, like it has to be a special set, which means like we can't make this super easy. But I think when I looked at like prices online and different things, yeah, I picked up some from the Pokemon Center where it had like the poster thing, and I just got like what they would let you order just to open up here. But if you go to like other websites, you can actually find prices that are actually more competitive than like what's in the Pokemon Center. And I always try to look anytime you buy something in the Pokemon Center, does it have the Pokemon Center stamp on there? Because I think those are more collectible or more desirable. But if it doesn't have that special, any sort of special like thing tied to it, if you can go to like your favorite card shop or online if someone's doing a promo or buy 4 get 1 free or something like that may be a better option than just buying direct. And just think about the better ways to buy things.
If you're trying to buy like bulk amounts of pallets or boxes, there's no faster race to the bottom than on eBay. You will not find a better place to buy large quantities of sealed modern product than eBay, because they're just constantly people just ever so slightly trying to undercut each other, even by $1 or $2. I'm just giving you the facts, man. Online stores, they have very little overhead other than just storing the cards. They don't have to pay employees. So if you're planning to buy large amounts of product, just jump on eBay, because you will not find it any cheaper than that. So overall, as a set of 151, I plan to do a complete binder eventually. The only thing I really didn't like is the fact that there was a slight change in the specialness or the gimmick between the English and the Japanese. Like the Japanese ones, there's like this Master Ball thing where in some of the commons and uncommons, they'll have like a special reverse foil where there's like a Master Ball kind of outline in the background, and that did not translate to English whatsoever. So that's kind of one of those things again where the Japanese are just doing it right, adding that extra level of rarity, whereas Pokemon North America English, they would rather just push as much product as possible, keep everyone happy, the competitors happy, and taking away from the whole collective nature of the hobby, which in my personal opinion is not the greatest thing in the world. Thoughts, feelings?
I mean, I can't believe it. It's like Japanese, they did something that for the collector, they're so pro player. So, all this and that. And it's like now they're like, they take away the Master Balls in English. They do the 3 promo cards, which they typically do. But it's like, you wish that you could pull the Mew out of the pack. Or, I remember if you could be Pokemon CEO for a day, what would you do? It's like, make it exclusive English art. Just do something where, you throw like a Mewtwo and a Mew or a tag team, for 151. Like, I thought that'd be kind of cool. There was some news that came out about Japan recently, and I don't know how widespread or how many people talked about this, but basically the Pokemon company said if you're a Japanese seller, a distributor, and you're caught shipping product overseas, they'll pull your product license. They'll pull your ability to be a distributor for Pokemon, because they want to keep more product in the country. And they want it to be like, if it's printed in Japanese, it's for Japan. It's not for everywhere else. And they see everyone on all these live streams, and so many people get the product even early in the US. So I'm super curious how that's going to play out, because the real answer, and many people have said this before me, is print more product. Like, just print to demand, print it to oblivion, crush the prices. Like, I'd love for everyone to be able to get the alt art Charizard, just, it doesn't have to be a $150 card, just, what do you think about that news?
I just think, like, at the end of the day, the buck stops in Japan. All the decisions are made in Japan because it's a Japanese-based company. So, like, the amount of product that's printed, like if if the North American side has an idea that or some sort of promo they have an idea for, they have to ask basically the people in Japan to give them the green light uh, for that to actually happen. Whereas like if the Japanese side just decides, oh, this is cool, we're gonna do this, there's like no approval process. Well, very little red tape, less red tape than it would be if the ideas was coming from the North American side. And you just mentioned like that like a second ago of like Japan like kind of like stipending the flow of cards to North America. Makes sense. It makes sense because I don't know if you remember this, but like I think it was like last year or like during peak COVID, like Japan literally ran out of Pokemon cards. You remember that when like there were like no
Yeah.
Pokemon cards in Japan? They had none. So they were not they had not printed enough just for like their own country. So that's probably what happens. And then they always try to like very often when they're kind of like with the new set release, there's like only a limited amount of product you can buy. You just can't go into a store like a customer just can't go into a store and just buy like 10 ETBs or whatever the equivalent of ETB is. There's like actual pack limits for the cards as well. There's also age limits as well. They prioritize getting the cards to younger children opposed to grown ass adults. So there's just like different layers of trying to control the amount of product that's going out there because they're just not printing enough. It's the fact that sometimes Japan just doesn't print enough Pokemon cards, which does, if you guys know anything about economics of supply and demand, it's just, they need to make more if they want to maximize product because they're not worried about the third party, right? They're worried about just selling as much sealed product as they possibly can.
Yeah, and they print it all in house. In Japan, they don't outsource that to China. There's a lot of fakes that come out of China because they have like the vector files, and you hear about a lot of playmats being fake these days. And I've actually passed on buying playmats recently because of that. And so because they print it in Japan, like they really have full control over everything. And maybe if we lead to like another hot topic here, when you go to Worlds or you interact with certain people, like I've heard it from a number of people from 2004, 2005. Ken Sugimori wasn't like the nicest guy to be around. He wasn't like someone who like seemed like he was really there for the collectors or the players or this or that. He was kind of more standoffish. And I heard that Arita and Harada and Himeno just fully embrace the crowd. And maybe this is a biased perspective, but Sugimori, one of the founders, like I've always had the same sort of feedback from people that he was a little more standoffish. Ishihara at this most recent Worlds, he was doing the signing along with Masuda. And Masuda, every time you see him, he's happy, smiley, can't wait to see you. And Ishihara actually stopped signing early, and they said, oh, he has to go to the main stages for that. And I think someone said he actually didn't go to the main stage for another hour or two after he left. And so if you're in that auto line, which, half the people didn't even get autos from Ishihara this year, to me, it kind of seemed like he was a little standoffish there too. Normally he smiles, he's happy and things are good. But it seemed like it almost felt like he knew that some things are going to be resold. And like, for me, like I would, if I got something from him, I would never resell it. I've never resold any auto I've ever bought. And I hope to continue that. But it just seemed like he was a little more standoffish. And I actually just got some feedback from a good friend of mine that of those half of the people that did not get autos from Ishihara, they actually got emails from the Pokemon company, and they're actually going to make it right for people that they're going to get put to the front of the line for Worlds next year to get autos from, I would assume it to be Ishihara, but if Masuda's taken over by then, maybe it's Masuda only. And they also are getting guaranteed spectator passes, which is really, really cool. Because even the spectator pass lottery is a challenge, and this past Worlds actually bought 5 spectator passes because they were harder to get for people, and I paid $300 a piece out of my own pocket, literally just in case friends needed them, because everyone was like, I can't get a pass. What do I do? I can't get a pass, and I had them for people just like, hey, if you need one, and then not one person needed a pass because everyone had passes, so I ended up just eating like $1,500 in cost on my own end. But like, I would hate to get there and then like a good friend like Jason like couldn't get in, so it's like, oh, hey, I have a pass for you. So I was walking around the event with 5 passes, but I don't know, I've got a plan for it. But yeah,
good guy Gem Mint looking out for the community. Just on the topic of you kind of like alluded to the fact Sugimori kind of has like a little bit of an attitude.
Yeah, well, it's what I hear. I've never met him. I've never seen him in person.
It just reminds me because when I go to like when I was going to E3s, like Shigeru Miyamoto was like always walking around, and like he's like the grandfather or the godfather of like Nintendo, right? Like creator, producer, Mario, Zelda, like basically the head honcho at of Nintendo.
Yeah.
And like anytime he's like walking around the convention floor, there's like a circle of like security around him. So you don't need to know, like you don't need to look for him because you and like if you try to like approach him whatsoever, the security is just like no, not today. It's just like kind of like basically like Taylor Swift security these days. Just not
Yeah.
you're not gonna have a stop and chat with Miyamoto, and he's not doing autographs or anything like that. But that's 151. So we also have the release of a promo, cards as well as merchandise. And I'm gonna let you. I didn't. You sent me like this crazy reel on on Instagram today, so I'll let you lead this one.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know it was like Black Friday. I didn't know it was like the rush for the hottest deal of the century, like this and that. No, the Van Gogh promo, which just released a couple days ago from when we're recording this, in Amsterdam at the Van Gogh Museum.
First off, before we get into the news, I love the art. It's beautiful. Like I love the vibes that card, the Tiki card especially is putting out. I'm definitely gonna get me one of them. In a PSA 10 copy, regardless of whatever the final sticker price will be. I kind of just like having like some like I like to have like these like non-expensive cards like displayed around the house just for people to see. So I'll definitely be picking one up. Yourself?
No, I mean, I think it's a beautiful card. I think there's something to be said about what's going on right now with kind of the release and stuff. And, I've heard a lot of the influencers, give their take on it and this and that. And really the video and maybe we can show the video for people here, or at least give a link if so people can see it. But it was utter chaos at the gift shop store, and from what I understand is basically from today to early January they're going to release these cards. Maybe 6,000 a day or so, up to I think it's 200,000 maybe total is what I heard. But a lot of people are getting doubles. A lot of people are getting kind of hordes of them, and you're supposed to get one card if you were to buy an item and complete a questionnaire. And I know they've already changed it to where you only get a card once you complete your visit at the museum. So they're already making changes on the spot. But the video is just, it's kind of crazy how, 2023, you can have adults who, to me, it clearly looks like they're there for the money or for the scalpers or this or that. Like I've always had the opinion, like, if there's something I want for my collection and you want it more, like absolutely keep it. Like I'd rather you be happy, or, I don't mind taking time. I don't mind, paying the going rate or the market price or something. It's always about the experience and keeping the hobby positive and happy, and trying to just keep Pokemon enjoyable and here for the future generations and the kids to come in. And when you see like that scene in the merchandise store, I think it's utterly like disgraceful. And the people who are there, I could have easily been someone that would have gone to that to try to get something. I could have been in the vicinity, but to be just rummaging through things and fighting, I think it's just a bad look for the hobby. I think it's a sign to Pokemon I think it diminishes their brand a little bit, and it may be difficult for other things like this to happen in the future. Like, some people are talking about maybe doing a Starry Night, at some point. It's like, well, they've had a couple of the crossovers, the Scream and now the Van Gogh. It's like, how are they going to continue to do this if their brand risk is there?
I can guarantee you, if that video that we saw online gets back to Nintendo, or well, it probably has at this point,
Yeah.
they're not going to be happy. Like I've said this multiple times. I've personally worked with Nintendo in the past, and they are all about preserving their brand and their IP and catering to like the younger generations, trying to keep the idea of Pokemon being this pure IP of just trying
For kids.
for kids basically.
Yeah.
And like stuff like this, they will not like it. They will shut that down immediately. Like you said, they've already on the fly basically said like you can't, in order to buy something you actually have to complete the exhibit tour. And that's kind of just basically like circuit breakers just to prevent like this Black Friday of Pokemon kind of just happening in Amsterdam. And keep in mind, like you don't have to be in Amsterdam just to get that card as well. There are other methods of getting that card. I think you can also eventually you'll just be able to get one with purchase from the online Pokemon store as well. But yeah, that merch, like you said, that merch like pile up, like just really a bad look for the hobby in general.
And one of my friends is saying, there's hundreds of millions of dollars of art in this museum, and there's no security, for this thing. It's like it just doesn't make sense, So I think that Amsterdam and the Netherlands probably got their act in order and probably changed that pretty quickly, especially given the location and where this is at. And it's not just the cards. There's posters, there's figurines, there's all kinds of things that are available. I saw the list; it was like 50 items, and if I can find that list, it's a huge Word doc. I can share it. But on Thursday, the September 28th, there was a release from the Pokemon Center at noon Eastern time where you could get Van Gogh merch, and it was only up for a couple minutes and it sold out like right away. And I think you did get a card with purchase or something, and that's since come off the website. Maybe it's back up by the time everyone sees this, but there will be other ways to get the cards. And I think first and foremost, we have to just reiterate just the bad look that is. It was probably something that only happened for 5 minutes. Probably 5 minutes after that video was taken, they probably fixed the situation. They probably, secured it, and it was probably easy or smooth after that. Or, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak for what happened, but it was probably only a very short window that it was that chaotic. You can't just sustain that chaos throughout the day. The police would get called or something. But, barring that little experience, I think there's some tremendously positive things to talk about with the Van Gogh promo and kind of the future outlook, just things that it could do for the hobby and this and that. And we can dive into some of those. But we really just have to keep the messaging. Like, if this happens in the future, just be an adult, and if this happened 20 years ago, the kids' parents would probably say, hey, act like a decent human being.
Flippers, man. Flippers, just damn dolphins out there. Like, it's just, I know people, everyone's entitled to figure out how to make a buck in the world their own way, but just like, I don't know, I just jumping in, like dogpiling on top of people for Pokemon cards. It's just it's not a good look for anyone. It's not a good look for the hobby. I think you just leave it at that.
Yeah, and so if we kind of close that chapter and we look ahead, let's assume that things are going to go normal and smooth from this point on. If you're looking to buy this card and add to your collection, I think it's a great card, a highly collectible card to put in your collection. You can look at what the Mario Pika's done. You can look at what the screen promos have done. And, you look at the different release methods of the screen promos, the Mimikyu being priced a little higher because it's a little more difficult to obtain versus the Pika. Keep in mind, this is a Pika. I think there's a Smeargle and then a Sunflora as well. And for me, actually, Smeargle takes the cake. I think to me, I just love that
Makes
card.
sense.
It's the painter.
Too. Yeah.
Like, I think that's so cool. I think the Smeargle could be the Mimikyu, but if they're released the same, then the Pika should price higher, if you just look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it like a buy-in price point for this card, I see a lot of them are 300, 350, online. Someone's like 35,000. I know what I have, like that eBay listing everyone's making jokes about.
I love that subtitle. I know what I.
Yeah. I almost want to click buy it now and just deal with the return bit, just to be like, it's sold. Everyone freak out.
Oh my god! I know what I have. I have a card that's literally been giving out for free. That Pokemon. It's let's stick with like long-term projections of like how this card is gonna do. What are we talking about? Are we talking about like Red's Pikachu? Are we talking screen promo price? Somewhere in between launch projections of those cards. Let's just stick with the Pikachu because that's going to be the most sought after one. I think.
I don't think Pika should ever go below $200. I think they can make 1 million of these cards, and I don't think it should be below $200 at a price per card. I think you can even make a case for buying every copy up to $500 a card, because if it goes to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, like what's your cost of capital, and then like for it to go to that point in a couple years. Because eventually, these go into collectors' hands. They get tucked away. They go in a binder. Less become available. 6 months from now, you're not going to see 1,000 of them on eBay like you might see today. People are going to be buying them in bricks of 500. I know people when Special Delivery Charizard came out, it was hard to get because you couldn't get it in person. You had to have it mailed, this and that. There were still people buying 1,000 at a time through different like outlets. So I truly think it's one of those cards that, long term, it's going to be $1,000 plus, even if it's printed to oblivion. I know that just feeds the scalper, mentality, this make money, quick buck, whatever. But it has all the right things to suggest that if you were to buy it over the next couple of months at $200 each, considering the whole market, every other card out there you could buy, like it's going to be a great card as far as just long-term investment, just unless they print like 10 million of them or 100 million of them.
Let's play the prices right. You ready?
Let's do it.
What will the first public sale of a PSA 10 Pikachu be sold for? Because you absolutely know someone has sent like 100 of them already to PSA, expedited overnight for quick turnaround to be the first to market. What is the first one selling for?
Gut first thought popped in my head is between 3,500 and 5K, probably one of those two prices. I think a lot of them sell for less than that. I think if the market pushes them and you get a pop, 1,000 PSA 10 and they're just constantly auctioning, you're going to see like a Master Ball Pikachu sort of situation where, it's like a 300 card raw, 500 card PSA 10. I think you're going to see this Pika hit 800, 600. It may come down if just everyone's getting pushed on the PSA 10. And what's funny about that is you're going to get upcharged if it's $1,000 card, then you're going to auction it. It's going to go for $600. So you're going to like get kind of double whammied on the PSA side, but it's just like it's difficult for the market to sustain just a mass supply push.
I need a number, not a range, Zach. I need
a number.
Like, first PSA 10 public sale. What's it going to be?
$5,005.
5,005.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with your low end. I'm gonna go with 3,500.
Okay.
I think that there's enough knowledge in the hobby that people understand like it's not a rare card. And I think that a lot of people understand like if they just wait long enough that it will drop. Like $3,500 is nothing to sneeze at. Like you can we saw first edition hollows going for like less than $1,000 a couple months ago. So $3,500 is quite a bit of money to drop on the card. And I think the market on it will stabilize. I think, like you said, I think you're in a good range of around. I think it settles around 600. To be honest with you, I don't think that like long term. I think like it'll settle around the $600 range. Between 600 to 800, I think is a good price for PSA 10 copy of that card. So that wraps up our talk about Modern. Very exciting stuff. We got some new promos. We got some new Modern release base sets. All right, so let's move on to some of the stuff that, because we recorded too late last week, that we want to talk on. We're going to save the big one for the end. So let's do some of the other ones. So PSA 9 TMB number 3. Beautiful card. The Executor in the background is just fantastic. Finishing off at 53,000 via Rare Candy. I personally think that's a little bit low. It's very low, albeit it's not a 10 grade. I still just like the history of that card. We're talking about 53,000. You're talking about around the same price, I guess, as Snap cards, around that range. But I just thought if you were the seller of that card, you would be a little bit disappointed with the final price, especially since it's not an extra copy. It actually is an awarded copy. What are your thoughts?
I mean, like you said, it definitely feels low. I think this is a signal of the whole market, feeling some pressure. You're seeing a lot of pressure on the stock market, kind of the greater economy. You're seeing a lot of, kind of feelers here and there, like maybe something's not happening to you, but maybe a friend or something is feeling some economic pressure here. And I think that there's some cards out there that probably have kind of held their price for a bit. And then now you're seeing people who are just focusing on things that aren't Pokemon related. Like when this card goes for 53K, it just tells me that it's probably a different pool of buyers in there. Maybe someone's just trying to keep the price at sort of a market minimum. I thought this would have, in the last couple of years, probably would have been 70 to 90 would have been a more appropriate price. So 53 definitely feels like someone saying, hey, I can't let this thing go for under 50. Let me throw a bid in. And then it goes for 53. But kind of like you were talking about with the history of the card, some people get it confused by it saying TMB, and they think it's like the 2001 or 2002 Tropical Mega Battle tournament in Hawaii. Like this is actually more on sort of the line with like the super secret battle, like Mewtwo that came out. The TMB, there were tournaments in Japan kind of spread out. And so it actually was awarded at not the Hawaii, event. It was awarded in Japan, from what I understand, and that was always a surprise to me. Just chasing the English VS deck and this and that is kind of like, oh, really? This didn't come out there? Because I always liked them because of that association. Then just it was like a fun fact you learn later. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I learned that wrong.
You have a choice of two. What do you take? Do you take the TMB or the SSB?
SSP, man, the Mewtwo's are just so cool. Like the Mewtwo's are so cool. Like Executor's like hobby history. It's classic. You see like Executor like everywhere, but like a Mewtwo with like a shadow, like That's just so cool.
They nailed what the cards were supposed to do, like the executor, like in the background, like they nailed the colors and the design absolutely perfect, with just supposed to be like bright and kind of lively design with like a lot of green and everything. And but they also completely nailed the SSB as well with the Mewtwo. Mewtwo's supposed to like dark, kind of like powerful in the background, so you don't even get the picture of him. You only get a shadow. He's like doing his iconic stance with the fingers. Yeah,
Yeah,
between
Destiny.
those two, between those two, I think like I would also agree with you. Like the SSB is just it's a beautiful card. You actually don't see many SSB move at all. You see a lot of the like Battle Road ones. I've seen TMBs. We've seen more illustrators moves. We don't see a lot of SSBs come to the market whatsoever.
Yeah, I remember the number one PSA 10 had a 250 price, and I remember when that popped up, I was like, "Oh, PSA 10 SSB 250, like that seems like a, very decent price given kind of where things were at a couple of years ago." And I think it was snap bought by someone. I'm going to get their location wrong, so I'm not going to say it, but I think more of those have also popped up as well. And so it still blows my mind that some of these trophies can get the PSA 10, because when you look at modern trophies like the number one Pika from like 2014 all the way to present, like there's only 3 PSA 10 number one trophies. And so like when you see a number one Pika, from 97, 98, an SSB, a TMB, I guess, yes, they are Japanese card stock and this and that, but like in my head, I'm like, PSA 10 on one of those is still like, you have to get the centering right. Like sometimes that seems to be the hardest part with,
Yeah,
especially the snaps.
yeah. Team B, I think it has a little like the person who ended up with that card should be very happy with that price overall. But we're gonna jump almost 3 times to that, so we're gonna move on to the PSA 10 play promo Umbreon. It's by far the most expensive evolution in the entire hobby. Beautiful card. It is up until recently with the 25th anniversary deck that came out last year. It was the only way to get that card in hollow foil. It's a beautiful card, and it was extremely difficult. We're talking about like actual rarity in terms of like the amount of points was absurd to actually acquire one of these. So it's a Pop 21 card, finishing off at 135k. I remember when I was like deep in the hobby, like a couple of years ago. I think like the floor, there was like a person just like snap buying them. Like he was maintaining the floor of them around like the 10,000 mark, which long term was obviously a very good choice, especially finishing off of 135k now. So I think the seller should be very happy with that price. You may know of some that have moved privately for a little bit more, but what are your thoughts?
Dude, first and foremost, shout out to Chalk, the fine card. He made an Instagram post recently just detailing how hard this card was to get. And like when you look through his post, it's like you had to be in so many tournaments, you had to place in so many tournaments, you had to do this and this and this. And, like you were saying earlier, you had to do all these things. And then after you do all those things, that was only a portion of the points you needed for Umbreon. Like it was like 50 tournaments and you had to place in the top 6. And he just given an example of like how to get there. But at the same time, like this is a very, very difficult card to get. I don't think like yes, we see, oh, it needs this many points, but how hard it is to get those points is tremendously like underestimated in my opinion. And I have a few friends that are still looking for this card, PSA 10. I talk to a couple of them regularly, and I know them seeing this card sell is kind of like a heartbreaker, because like they still want to get that card. They still want to chase sort of price points that are a little bit older. But it's one of those things that's just I just see this card continuing to grow. 135 does seem like a high price at first glance and a record price from what I understand. And I know that it was available a little bit higher than this by it now, and it just wasn't selling right away. And so taking the 135 is still like a really strong compared to what's popped up. But I do think this is a card that'll continue to go up in the future, just because that organic demand is there for the card. And the people that are in the market for it are capable of buying it. It's just I feel like a lot of them are getting tucked away. Like I don't think there's one person with 10 of them or 5 of them or anything like that.
I feel like how difficult this card was to obtain. The actual pop of 21's kind of high. What do you think?
I mean, it does feel like that way, given like what we know about it, how like how little you see that. And you got to keep in mind, like pop 2110s, like that's true 21. Like it's not like pop 59s and half of them been cracked. It's like there are 2110s. And I think Japanese is a little bit easier to grade. I think people will probably grade this card a little bit earlier. So you could look at the cert numbers. If there's a lot of 2-7 certs, maybe they aren't the strongest. And I haven't looked at all the cards, but that could be a factor as well. But it's a card that, like, if you got it like a trophy card, you're gonna know how hard it is to get. You're gonna know the grind you went through to get that card. And if you bought it, like, you probably didn't buy this card for $100 or $500. You probably bought this card for a substantial amount of money. So it's one of those cards that's probably more protected. It's probably kept a little bit safer. Most of those big cards today just grade well because people just take good care of them. They don't throw them in a binder. So maybe that's a factor if we're just brainstorming here.
Talking about unhappy people, the person who sold the CGC Illustrator, CGC 10 Illustrator, I think is probably not having a good day right now, with its final price of $4.95. I think that we were both way off.
Yeah,
we thought that like cross collectors, people from different avenues of the hobby outside of Pokemon, would kind of like throw their hat into the ring and their wallets into the ring as well. I guess 1.7,
mm-hmm.
and then I think you guessed around 2.
I guess 1.5, and I think I probably said 3 was like the highest, but probably 2.5 to 3 would have been the high end if people got competitive. But I thought 1.5 was that was my guess on last week's podcast.
So this is one of the better conditioned illustrators in the entire world, and as well, I think there are a lot of factors of like it takes 2 to tango. If you want to get that top price for an auction, you need at least 2 people, and it could just been like the fact there's also the fact that like 2 just popped up recently, because when you're talking about like truly rare items, you're banking on the fact that like no one else is going to be selling this type of thing. And so I think like the 2 showing up previously really did affect like how this card finished off. I know like with these big auction houses with Heritage and like Golden, you can't just like see. This is like a month like a half a year process to get the card submitted, listed, getting ready to go, and you just can't at the last minute tell them, look, this card just popped up on the market, I'm pulling my card. That's not allowed. Once you committed to a date, you're stuck on that date, and you can't do anything about it. So let's just talk about overall your thoughts on the final price of $495,000.
I mean, I think it's just a disappointing price. I don't think anyone expected it to go for that. It was a card when it first popped up I was interested in. I was interested in acquiring it for my collection. And then, I can kind of talk through like my thoughts. And I was not the winner of this card. I did bid on the card, but I wasn't the winner of it. And why I think it went for what it went for. I think earlier we talked about just overall market conditions kind of going down a bit and just the market being a little bit scared. And so I think anytime that happens, just having a strong cash position is just better overall, just to de-risk yourself. And I think there's a lot of pressure from, all these things coming out to buy. And I think just, sitting on cash is just better in bad market conditions. I think another major factor is how many illustrators keep popping up. I didn't even know about the 7.5 at Golden that popped up. And, when that sold, it sold for 300,000, which is kind of like, I thought is like a market bottom. The market basically saying, hey, we'll pay 250 for any condition illustrator out there raw. We'll pay 300 for a graded copy. That's kind of a minimum condition one that, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And so for me, like to say 300K is like the minimum. And then you have something in a gem mint grade. Like, yes, it's a CGC 10. Like, I think when you go by the grading standards, everyone kind of says, Beckett Black Label, PSA 10, CGC Pristine. And then you have, the CGC 10 kind of below the PSA 10 if you're just objectively talking about any card. And so, like, yes, there's a Logan Paul comp of 5.3 million, but yeah, that went to liquid marketplace. Yeah, that probably could have been blown out of proportion since he was doing some partial sale and this and that for it. And but he did pay $4 million cash to our friend Dubsy for that card, and so he actually did get the money for that. So it was a legit like $5.3 million sale. You could argue the price of the PSA 9 in there. And so when you see all those comps, it's like everything suggests that, a gem mint card, should go for more than a PSA 9. But I think a lot of people probably looked at the card itself. And, I told you guys last week that I'm more of a fan of a card with perfect like edges and perfect corners that's off center. And I think Rusty kind of said, hey, I'm the same way. And a couple people are the same way. And there's some people, I think maybe yourself, Tetra, hey, I'd rather have a card be perfectly centered that maybe has a little nick on the back, or because you're not going to look at the back, you're going to look at the front. And if the centering's perfect on the front, and most sports guys are that way, they prefer a perfectly centered card. And so it just kind of teach their own. What do you prefer? But for the one on Golden to go for 300 and this to go for 500, like it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't make sense. I talked to Heritage at the National. Hey, who's interested? Well, we think it's going to go for 1.5, and they could just be salesmen, this and that. They told me that they think the buyer of this isn't a comic. They think it's probably a comic book buyer, or someone that's outside the Pokemon space, someone that just buys like the blue chip items, the high end items. And so in my head, I was like, well, I'm probably not going to know the buyer. It's probably gonna be someone else who just wants, a big card. And I still don't know who the winner was. I know kind of where my bid was, and I know the second place bidder. And it kind of shocks me. I mean, if you think pure minimum, like 700-800, but I've talked to a few people, and one I was like, yeah, I think that was fair. So I have gotten that remark from someone, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, big bust by CGC. It's a bad look for CGC, and I get that feedback a lot too. And so I think I'm still just trying to interpret it and process it a little bit, and just your interpretation of it, Tetra. I mean, what are kind of the big call outs for you?
It's just one word, like you said multiple times, right? It's really disappointing. I think I don't want to like overreact but I just, in my head, I had like the high, because, okay, I'll give you an example. So when I was kind of like researching like first edition Zard, that's all I knew at that point. But like when I was researching that card, there was like, I could see like Scott's listing on eBay for like his Illustrator, and his Illustrator in terms of like PSA 10 price for Zard is usually about like 4 times a Zard, which makes sense. So like Zard's at like 250, so we expect like Illustrator to be like around $1 million. And like so when you have like, I know it's not the high anymore, but like if you talk about like a peak of Zard at like 400,000, for like 100,000 for the Illustrator to only be like $100,000 more, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Even if you take like the low end, Zard's at like 2.25 now, 2.5 for an Illustrator. It doesn't have that like in my head that like that stages of rarity of what the prices should be in comparison to each other. All right, so just building off the talk of the Illustrator and the final price. So the main topic of this week is how to sell or maximize your profits on some truly rare items in the hobby. We're not talking about your Mario Pikachus, your I don't know, Worlds promos. We're talking about like truly rare items, illustrators, trophy cards, SSBs, all that good stuff. So let's let you start off, and then I'll jump right in.
You mean Mario Pika isn't a truly rare item? Oh my gosh.
It's not.
I mean, how many eBay listings do you see? It's like 101. That's like the only one in the world.
I know what I have.
I know.
I have some Mario Pikas right here. See, I have them everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the number one thing when you have an item you truly want to sell is to understand that patience pays. In the collectible world, if you ever are under pressure to sell, or if you feel like you have to sell, like you're just never going to hit the top price unless you just find the perfect buyer. Generally, you want to, take your time. You want to make as many people aware as you can. And there's a lot of strategy to different little things. So if you get a really strong like offer or price right away, typically like you might want to take it. I think over the years, sometimes you have an item you really want to sell, and maybe you try to take 3 months, 6 months, a year to take. That best offer may come right away because that person's been looking for it. Like, don't be afraid to take a fair offer if it is kind of in that realm. But generally, the more patient you are, the more people that you can make aware of an item, the broader the market reach you can get, it's going to be the best way. And so if you're not someone with a large following or some sort of influence, using an auction house or using like an influencer or using someone to help broker the card is a great way. So for many years, people would use Scott to broker illustrators. He knew where the illustrators were, and he knew who the buyers were. And so to this day, many of his buyers are private. And so the only way to get to him is through him. or you can always go to an auction house, which is a very public way of doing it. And you're really going to rely on that auction house to market your card and really sell it for you. And so if they, follow through on those promises, or they don't sell the card as well as they should, or maybe they have a card that's a little bit better, they want to sell it before yours, then sometimes you can get kind of squeezed there, especially with the buyer's premium, this and that. Generally, if you're going to use a broker like, Scott, or, Dan Got to Catch 'Em All, or Old School Pokemon. I mean, there's so many out there. You can even use me at times. We'll charge some sort of like flat fee or some sort of rate. That's going to be much more, it's going to be much better than like what an auction house is charging when it comes to those bigger items. So have you
just to play I'm gonna play devil's advocate here though. Like if you're talking about like truly rare items that don't pop up that often, there's kind of a bit of a power play there, especially if you know where all the copies are. There's a little bit of a power play. You can kind of hold the market by the balls. I'm not trying to say that some people have or haven't, but it's the way it is. If you are the only one who know where they all are, then you kind of can basically control the market in some sense. So I think like all these illustrators coming in at the same time, like we already said, that's probably why this last one finished at what we perceive as a low amount of value. But just to kind of like build on what you said as well, I think it's also important just not to over leverage yourself in terms of these big ticket items. I've told you this story before on this podcast, like when those 4 E4 members bought the Illustrator online for like 16K, and they tried to immediately flip it again for 20K once they graded it at PSA 9. This is time machine prices, obviously. That was still below, I think, market value at the time, but this is still time machine prices. But the reason why is because they were completely over leveraged on that card. So they had to get their money back immediately. And at the end, they made like $1,000 each profit, split 4 ways. So it's really important that like if you're going, you have to have the ability to hold these big ticket items for a significant amount of time if you want to maximize the amount of profits that you can make off those items.
Yeah, and even the private market, they're going to have a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And if you're a buyer of an Illustrator, some of that information may be coming to you. And so for people kind of sitting on the side, they're just watching the auction. Oh, it feels like it's a little low. Like some other market data that may have suppressed this price is, the population of the CGC 10 Illustrator went up mid-auction. So it's now pop 4. The PSA 7.5 that was auctioned, just like a week or so before, and that may have taken the low end Illustrator buyer out. Golden actually has a BGS 9 Illustrator coming up in like a month, or it may be up when this video goes live. And so if you know of all these things that are happening, and even private deals, I think one of the pop 4 CGC 10 Illustrators, I think another one may have been available privately. And so like when you hear all this activity and you see how available these things are, I think that probably also contributed to the lower price for that $495 Illustrator sale. And so getting that information can be helpful. And so, if that person, knowing all these things, and when you go through Heritage, they just have a 2-month sort of loop when you submit a card and when you get paid. And it's really hard to time the market when you submit something to Heritage. It's like nearly impossible. You have to basically just let the card, hit whatever price it's going to hit. And then you get paid like 45 days after. And so while they do have a huge reach, they have, the coin buyers, the art buyers, this or that, you kind of have some trade-off here and there depending on what auction house you use. So that is going to be a benefit when you go down the private route. Another good example for, the how to sell a card is, Rare Candy's auction, some of the bigger cards recently, the Snap cards going for around 50K each. They had the TMB Executor go for 50K each. And I think, some of the people that are buying those cards, they're buying them and then they're making them available privately because, unless you're online at that time, you're a bidder, you're registered with that auction house, you have approval, you can have the money right away. It's just really difficult to kind of get all those stars aligned to hit the top price. Whereas if you have the patience, you have that 6 months to a year to make a deal for a card. Okay, I have a guy that's going to pay me 2x what I think the going rate is in this card, but he needs like 3 months to pay or needs to move some money or this or that. So it's like, okay, I'll wait 3 months to get double the price. That makes sense. And a lot of times that happens, so when PWCC did their capital program and you could lend off a card, you could borrow, you could put $500,000 worth of cards in there, take a $100K loan out. And then all of a sudden you had liquidity in what's typically a non-liquid market. So of course people got in trouble with that and people went underwater. There's there's all kinds of stuff there, but it did give people the ability to kind of snap by those higher end cards without the pressure to sell. Whereas typically, the more patient you are and kind of having a strong liquidity position for a higher end card is going to give you your best bet if you're a buyer. But if you're a seller, it's like you have to take the position that if this card doesn't sell, you're okay with it. Like if it sells, it's great. If not, then I'm going to keep it. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself in a pickle, in my opinion.
Those Fleer Jordan rookie cards and Tom Brady rookie cards got a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah,
when everything fell through, when the market just tanked on those, a lot of people went underwater.
I don't know the numbers, but I've heard that a few of those 800K Jordans may have gotten loans on the 800K valuation. It would have been a conservative. It would have been 800K minus some, but like 800K was like the starting point. So,
All
yeah.
right. Okay, so I'm gonna hypothetical time because I
Okay.
love my hypotheticals. So Zach, you have an Illustrator. You have an Illustrator, just not leveraged. You're not leveraged overly. Well, let's just say we'll take different positions. I want your explanations on both positions. So you have an Illustrator in your hand that you want to sell.
Today.
Today, and you're trying to decide what you want to do. You have options to do whatever you want. You've seen where the market is heading towards with the last three, with the CGC 10 at just under 500,000. What are you doing? What is your short term and your long term play?
What's the grade of the Illustrator?
I'm gonna give you a 9. I'll give you a 9. PSA 9. PSA 9.
PSA 9? I mean,
well, let's differentiate. Okay, let's just do different situations then, because this could apply to other people as well with rare cards, different grades. We all have different things in our collection. So let's just say you have 8 and a 9. So give me the different hypotheticals in that situation.
the interesting part is I think the cash today price for the 8 and the 9 is actually pretty similar. I think I could probably get 400. Well, I mean, because the 7.5 sale and the 8 so close to 7.5, you could probably, I mean, realistically, if I needed cash today, I could probably get like 300 to 350 wire today, probably for the 8, maybe like 400 for the 9. I think that's tremendously low for the 9. I think a fair market value today for the 9 is probably like the 7 to 800 range if like it were to be auctioned. I think you could probably get someone to agree to a deal on some sort of longer term. Definitely below the million. I don't know of anyone that would do a deal over $1 million for a 9 right now. But I think you probably get a few people at the 600 range. That's if it's a PSA 9. A PSA 8, I think it'd be tough to push the 500 because I think, with the CGC 10 going for what it went for, it's like, people in this realm, they're going to push comps. They're going to use every leverage point they can. And if they know you want to sell, it's going to be harder. So the cash today price is 30 to percent lower so than I think the long-term sale price.
So is it like zero chance you're sending to an auction house?
I probably wouldn't send it to an auction house today just because there's so much pressure on people. Like if you're an Illustrator buyer at the beginning of this year and you see so many go through and you haven't pulled the trigger, like, I don't know. In my opinion, it's like they just keep popping up. And, the people who own them, are they long-term holders? Are they collectors? Are they resellers? Are these people who, oh man, I got a great deal on this 500K CC 10. I can't wait to resell it in a couple of months. And it's like, well, if I can get that for 550, is that better than, PSA 8? It's like, I don't know. And so it's like, you have all these thoughts and, some cards don't come up, like 97 Pikas. Like, when was the last time you saw those? Like in a real 97, not like a mislabel.
Yeah.
So that's another point. So if you're an Illustrator buyer, it seems to, you kind of put a lot of control back in the buyer's hands. And I would probably lean towards holding it for a little bit or waiting for the buyer to come to you. But sometimes, like these cards didn't pop up for a couple of years, or, the market would be waiting, or, you build up some hype. And when I auctioned one of my Zards a couple of years ago, there hadn't been one in like 6 months. And a lot of people were asking for one. That contributed to me saying, oh, I don't send it to auction house. Like, hey, let's find out people's true high price. And, sadly for me, it actually went lower than I think, a few recent private comps, maybe like 80% lower than a few private sales. Not 80% lower. I went 80% up, so like 20% lower.
I think correct me. Marco was at 30. I think you sold for 22.
It was like 23.9, 24.
Yeah.
So it was like, 6K off the 30 mark. But
so let's just say there are some benefits to using auction house too, because some people can leverage current assets as well,
Yeah.
so they can bid a little bit more because they're leveraging their collections as well, such as with PWCC. But what you said with private deals, you can wait it out. Also, you can also make some sort of payment arrangement plan as well. That's how I bought a couple of my cards. That's how I bought my master key as well as my set of scramble cards. They were paid off 14,000, around 14,000 each over 4 months. But at the same time, that you kind of that's the type of thing that you'd have to build through like some sort of relationship, which is also another thing I wanted to talk about as well. I know that if most likely if you are a person who owns some of these rare cards as well, you're probably well in tuned in the hobby or well versed in the hobby in terms of buying, selling, who's recognizable, who's like where you should not ship cards in terms of just global geography. Do not ship your cards to like the Netherlands. That's not a good. I'm sorry, but you don't want to ship your cards to the Netherlands. That's a
That's where
bad
Van
place.
Gogh is. That's where Van Gogh. Oh.
Not there. You probably don't want to ship your cards. Some other places that. Well, that's another topic where you shouldn't ship your cards, but yeah, that's probably the first place that comes to mind when I think about like the no-fly zone of mailing cards. But that's another thing I want to talk about. Like, let's just say hypothetically, you own a card and you are not versed in selling cards whatsoever. You've only been buying, person as me, like me, this entire time. So you don't feel comfortable selling. Let's just say you have the options of using major auction houses versus major figures in the hobbies. So people like yourself, Scott, you have Dan, Gotta Catch 'Em All, Rusty, TCA Gaming. Let's just talk about like the benefits, like of like letting these people kind of deal with it. Obviously, you still have the issues of getting the cards to them. That's also a built-in inherent risk. But at the same time, I think like the most important thing is that these people, this entire hobby is like a large chunk of this hobby is built a reputation, and them screwing you over is not worth losing the reputation. So I'll let you take away because you probably have been approached to. Oh, I know you have because this is your full-time hobby, full-time job now. So I'll let you take the floor here.
I'm just thinking of all my nice Netherlands friends who are like some of the kindest, sweetest people, and I've met them, many times, different places, and I just want to say that I do still really love my Netherlands friends.
My opinion does not reflect Zach's opinions
Yeah.
here. So like my biases do not tie directly to Zach. So that my opinions are my own here.
Yeah, just want to throw that out there. Some of the most friendly people I've met are from the Netherlands. But no, I think it's a good call. If I was someone who didn't know what to do, the first thing I would do is I would try to consume as much content as I can to be as educated and as knowledgeable as I can. And then I would consider maybe having some sort of like paid consultation with someone just to ask them a bunch of, well thought out questions so that you're getting direct answers where they're giving you the time, where they're like, that time is committed, it's not just kind of a one-off, like, hey, on the fly, it's like they're dedicating 30 minutes to you or something. This is if you have a high-end card where it's absolutely worth it. A lot of the auction houses will do this for free. You can ask them, but their goal is obviously to get the consignment, but they will go through all that with you. I think the number one thing is if you leverage someone else to sell a card for you is make sure that they send you a prepaid label that's fully insured. And so not only have them send you a label, but make sure that their insurance covers the value of the item. And so anytime I send a label to anyone for anything, like my insurance is up to $1 million per package. And so a lot of times I do a deal. It's like, oh, hey, I'll ship it to you. It's like, let me actually give you a label because I want to make sure that there's no issues here when you ship stuff over. So I've had, probably a number of packages come over from Europe and they're all on my prepaid labels because if something happens, like we're good. Like, insurance pays that every time. And it rarely, if ever, do you even need to go that route because all the insurance they require signature to and from. And so, make sure that you do have that label and it is fully signed for. Then the other things you just want to kind of vet, who's the expert, for that card. And so there's certain people I would go to for certain things. And you kind of just, it'll become very evident whatever you're trying to go through, who that person is. And it's never bad to go through an auction house. So I just want to make it clear, like, some of the biggest records have been set via auction houses, like via public auctions. some of the biggest records have been set via private deals. And a lot of people don't know this, but many auction houses will do private client deals. They'll sell a card for you, buy it now directly to someone who's looking. But a lot of times they'll reach out to you if they know you have the card. They don't. It's not really a proactive thing. It's kind of like, if I reach out to Golden or PWCC and say, hey, I'm looking for a 98 Pika. I'll match the last deal, 444K. They'll probably go talk to people who have those cards and try to figure out a deal. They'll take a cut as well too, but there's a lot of ways to do something, and don't feel like the first person you talk to, so you got to go with. And sometimes I have that pressure where, I talk to someone for 20 minutes, I feel really good about it, and you have that pressure to go with them. It's like, take your time. It's okay to go through 4 or 5 people or figure out the best thing. Obviously respect people's time, but there's not a right or wrong way. You just have to do what you think is right. And I always try to get in situations where when I look back, and I say, if I was in that spot, exactly the same way 6 months from now, knowing everything that I know, would I make the same decision? And if you feel like you can say yes, then, hindsight's 20/20, but you just want to feel like you do the same thing twice.
So let's just talk about, like, in terms of, like, since we're on the topic of like maximizing profits, let's talk about the juice that you're gonna have to pay when let's just say you send to an auction house or you go through a private person, a community member. So PWCC's standard buyer's premium is 20%. Obviously, if you are bringing, I would always go in with a lot of questions, especially if you have like a really truly rare item. We're talking about like really rare items. I'm not talking about like Poncho Pikas that are constantly going.
That's a goal for some people. Like that's like the top.
Yes, yeah, okay, but it's not like a really rare item. There's constantly a rotation of like Poncho Pikas coming out like all the time through PWCC. So most likely, if you're saying those types of cards, your bargaining power to negotiate like a lower rate in terms of the commission is somewhat diminished. But if you have like something really rare that will bring more eyes to their auction. Everything in life is mostly negotiable at some point. But since you've been approached and you probably have dealt, so don't be afraid to ask for a lower rate below that 20% buyer's premium. But since you are in the realm of actually dealing with, like, let's just say, I just want to kind of I want you to give me examples of like what's the going rate in terms of like a brokerage for like someone. You don't have to give exact numbers, but like if you were to send someone to Scott, is it like a flat fee of like 5,000 at like a certain barrier, or is it just like a flat percentage across the board? What generally is like the go-to and the standard basically of dealing with like these private middlemen?
Yeah, I mean, it just needs to be worth their time. And so I think a lot of people understand if you bring a high-end card, it's going to bring views and clicks and attention, and it's going to help everything else sell that maybe isn't that high-end item. If I'm selling a really high-end item through someone, I'll try to negotiate something that it's still worth their time, because I still want them to actively push the item or promote it. Like, I still want it to be like one of the things on their radar. If I negotiate a 0% fee with someone, then like, what's their incentive to sell for the highest price? And some people may do that if it's just going to bring that many eyes and marketing and save them this and that. But I always try to make sure there's something, for them, because they're going to have a marketing budget to spend. Privately, I mean, if the item's big enough, people will go below 5% on stuff. I've gone below 3%, but you got to understand, people are still getting like almost 10K and like fees on certain things. So it's like, it's still very much worth their time. Some of the bigger items, some of the auction houses that, they charge 25% buyer's premium. I think one auction house charges 20%. Almost all of them charge 25%. What you can do is like a -10. And so where you get 110% of the hammer price. And so you get 100% of the price and you get 10% of the 25% of the buyer's premium. The highest I'll see anything go is like 15 on like a sweetheart deal. Like, you're promising to send more, like, we really want you, this and that. Like no one really goes above that. I mean, sometimes you hear about it, but I've just never been a part of that. So it's one thing to hear something, it's something to experience it. But some auction houses will even do like +10, where like you get 90% and they get 125%, which is crazy. And that's the case in non-TCG categories, especially some of the bigger places. And to me, like, for someone to agree to that, it just seems like do your research, man. Like, you should at least get 100%, or, so like definitely like shop all the markets. And if a card's going to go for a lot more at one auction house, but you're not getting the gaps pretty wide, it's like going privately and it's selling for less. And it's just, you really got to think through all of it. Hitting the record price doesn't mean as much if you aren't getting the same amount of money.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I know that this is like a very rare occurrence, because if you purchase these rare items, you most likely understand what you have already. But there are certain circumstances. I'm going to give you a story right now that's just like, the moment it was happening, I was just kind of like blowing my brains out. So, uh, on on the E4 Discord, there was a community member. I forget his name already. Him and his friends owned a card shop in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So Seattle is the home of WotC. And in the earliest stages of WotC, it was not uncommon, because the employees were being paid terrible, to actually just be given product. Like literally boxes and boxes of sealed product of Pokemon base, fossil, all that type of stuff. But also Magic the Gathering. So it was like this like 0.1% story where this lady literally just walked in with like a grocery bag full of Magic cards. And she's actually been a return customer. I think she dropped off like a shadowless. It was like a confirmed shadowless box, as well.
Yeah.
Anyways, my story is that, so what she had was like literally a garbage bag full of test print Magic cards, like test print
Oh my
Magic cards,
gosh.
and she was literally gonna throw them away, just like toss them in the garbage, because they look like Magic cards aren't the most like graphically appealing cards already, and like factor on the testers, they look like junk basically.
Yeah.
So she brought these cards into the card shop, and the card shop dealers had to, like, once again, this is like an E4 community member as well, so they should have a general idea of like how to deal in selling with cards. So they literally just posted the pictures of the cards on like a Magic community forum, and everyone was kind of giving them like the background information on them, and then they were just like flash selling them. Like the store was like flash selling them on behalf of the woman for like $1,000 a pop. And I'm like,
Oh
dude,
my
man,
gosh.
and they're like, and they were listening to what the community members were saying of how much these cards were worth.
Yeah.
But then I'm trying to like tell him, like, in a very nice way, like, you kind of control the market and control what the prices of these are. The chances of these coming back to market is very slim. And he was just like taking what the community members who were literally buying the cards from him were saying. My advice to him was to like get them graded, get them in cases. And he's like, no. The people in the Magic community don't want them in cases. I'm just like, who cares what they want, man? You control the market. You get to control how you distribute these things. Don't just like I know like brick and mortars kind of going the way of the dodo. Card shops increasingly being difficult to manage, just because, like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, like eBay stores, people with distributor prices, the race to the bottom, constantly undercutting everyone else is a thing. It's a real thing. It is a problem if you're trying to occupy a retail space. But it's just like, I had never, at that point, I had never sold anything, but just like so many alarms were going off in my head at that time.
That's crazy, man. That's insane. I mean, you really do like control everything. You can kind of do what you want. It's one of those situations where card shops still don't make that much money. I mean, a lot of people's dreams to open a card shop, and it's like they're not making 50%, 40%. Like some are making 2 to 5 to 10%, like average margins. Like, for them to get a cash out of a quick $1,000 or something is like really, really good. Hold on.
Yeah, I see. Kind of like, it's like anyone in the hobby, I always hear like the dream of owning a card shop. That's always a thing. But like another thing that since I'm in like entrenched in like the video game kind of side of YouTube, another question that I always constantly get from people is like, oh, I want to be a video game tester. How do I how do I get my foot into the industry? I'm just like, dude, you do not want to be a video game tester. The salary and the benefits of those people are like nothing. I've tested them before, and like just to avoid like I'm not gonna name companies here, but just to kind of avoid like the tax situation, they don't even pay you in money. They pay you in like a gift card to like a mall. It's just
Oh,
because once you exchange like actual cash, right? There's an entire thing that you had to go through in terms of just like declaring it on like a tax form. And the hours are terrible. People think that if you're being a video game tester, you're going to be playing some of the best games in the industry, AAA titles. It's not the bulk of it. You're playing like terrible indie games that are like super broken and like
broken.
half finished and not good whatsoever. So yeah, you don't want to be a video game tester. For all you people out there who think that that's like the dream job, it's
Yeah.
not a good situation overall.
From the goat himself, the video game goat, Tetra Ninja, just going through all the arcs and stuff, man. I could imagine just playing broken video games. I used to work in healthcare a lot, and I think a lot of people don't understand is like when you see patients, you see all the patients. You don't just get to see like the sports athletes, this and that. It's like, so I'm like hearing that like from you there. Like I'm sure it's painful to do that video game testing, man.
Yeah, just kind of like put a bow on the whole selling rare items thing. My best thing to do is just talk to a lot of people, because if you have multiple people telling you the exact same thing and they're recognizable people in the hobby, then most likely they're not trying to sell you snake oil. They will give you honest advice and also, as always, you can like just leave a comment down below and like this video and just say, I have this, what's the best way to go about it. We'll just try. We can't do like a full in-depth thing, but we'll just kind of we can guide you into the somewhat correct direction of what you should be doing.
Things not to do. I mean, like, you can make a Facebook post and be like, "Hey, what's this worth?" Then you have all the gatekeepers on like an item for a price who are not actual buyers, and it's like when you see an item that just comes up for sale over and over again, the person wants so much money that everyone tells them it's worth something, but it never sells. Don't you think the item's probably not worth that much when you have all these like gatekeepers who aren't actual buyers? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, like the Facebook gatekeeping on some of that stuff. Just I don't know. It just that blows my mind.
All right, so moving on to one of my favorite sections of our podcast, which is Collector's Corner, where Zach and I get to show off some of the cool stuff that we've accumulated over the years. Sometimes we've had them for a long time. Sometimes, usually with Zach, it's more recent pickups because he's always on the hunt for those obscure error cards that just I'm just assuming it's gonna be some sort of air card. I'm just guessing, but anyway. So Zach went first last week. I will go first this week. So just on the topic of play Umbreons, I thought that I would bust out the other three play evolutions that I
I
own.
knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
You do it.
I was telling you,
So
I know, man.
so this is the play Flareon, Jolteon, as well as Vaporeon, part of the play promo. Same. I think it's the same set as like the E-card Charizard as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I will snip that out. But anyways, so they are points. You need to accumulate a certain amount of points to actually acquire these cards. Obviously, the Espeon and the Umbreon stand at the top tier. These were actually the before the Vaporeon as well as the Jolteon were usually.
Oh no.
No, it's okay.
Are they nines?
I said they're nines now. They're nines now. But the Espeon, the Jolteon and the Vaporeon were pretty readily available. I think they're around like $200 to $300 when I picked them up. What was difficult to find was obviously the top two, but the Flareon at 30,000 points was actually kind of difficult to find as well. I picked this up from an E4 community member, Evie in Space, Samantha. She's based in the UK. Big shout out as well to our boy Elliot Poke Chaos, because he actually also middled the deal for me. I think Samantha was also one of those people as well who wasn't that versed in like selling cards at that time. So I've been kind of the Espeon and the Umbreon are just like kind of like eternally out of reach at this point to us mere mortals. So I might think, because since I'm never gonna be able to complete that set, I might actually at some point let this set go.
No. It's
Yeah,
collector's corner. Come on.
it's collector's corner, but we can't own everything, and when we can't, I don't know. I'm sad. I wanted to at least pick up the Espeon at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah. So for a while, I was searching for an Espeon as well. But the only person that I wasn't searching that hard because I wasn't really asking like everyone you should ask, but I knew that one was available from like Pokemon Pacific, but at that time I just didn't feel like paying the price of what I thought it was. Obviously, in hindsight, should have because of where that card is sitting up now. But I said it before. Like I think he was at like 4,000 at that point for the Espeon, and like the floor for like Umbreon, I said at the beginning was like 10,000. But the Umbreon is just crazy. Crazy rarity and crazy difficult to obtain, and you're just like bidding against so many other rabid EV buyers as well. So yeah, so those are my cards. You may see them in an auction at some point, but I thought that just because the play Umbreon just showed, I thought it'd be a good time to like showcase those ones.
That's pretty sick, man. I think it's like one of the sets or cards. Like, if I had been more knowledgeable in the hobby like earlier on, I probably would have tried to pick up some of that stuff. Like, especially like gold stars and stuff. Like all that stuff is just S tier when it comes to just what it does for your collection. It has all the right metrics, has all the right things you look for. It's really hard to put any doubt on like owning something like that. Like long term, if you decide to go for it, like typically whatever the market is probably pretty fair. Like, I think for a lot of those cards, it's hard to say like, oh, they're overpriced, because like the market generally like supports like the story with a lot of those. I mean, even the Umbreon we talked earlier, like if it went for higher than 135, like I'd say, okay, it makes sense. It's one of those cards that has a lot of the right metrics, and so like adding something like that to your collection, I think is stellar. So now you have it run it out.
You know what's funny though? Like the reason why I started collecting the Japanese gold stars is because I thought I was just completely priced out of the English gold stars. I
Oh
was just
my
like,
gosh.
I'm not paying $30,000 for Rayquaza. Like, what's in a, like we said this like last episode. Like you set like have a scope or you'll go broke. But
Yeah.
my scope was that I don't have the capital or desire to spend the amount of money on the Gold Star Rayquaza or the Gold Star Charizard. So the next best goal that will be attainable is acquiring them in the Japanese format of the first editions as well. Obviously, with these play promos, they also they come in the non-play version as well, the world champ, like I think it's like a world championship version or something like that. So there are different versions of those cards as well. Notably, also with the Umbreon, they did that reprint last year or a couple years ago with the anniversary set. So yeah, I came to these cards because I have a lot of like Japanese gold stars, at least like one copy of. Don't have the Rayquaza, don't have the Charizard. They're probably out of reach at this point as well. So it's also another reason why I'm probably gonna let these cards go, because I'm not gonna ever complete that set. But yeah, I just tried to set a obtainable goal, and then these cards kind of just like fell into place, and that's the main reason why I picked them up.
It's awesome, man. Like I think you should hold on to him, but man, just pick up the Umbreon. Maybe let go of something else and throw it in your collection.
Mm-mm.
All right, so I'm gonna come in and depress you guys because because Tetra's card of the week is always better, and we don't plan it out this way. It's just like whatever he has is probably just gonna be slightly better. And so what I did is I went through a lot of cards, and I think sometimes we've thrown in some higher value stuff. Is I went pick a card that every time I see it, I'm happy. Like every time I see it, I'm like, wow, it's a great artwork, and like, wow, I'd love to have that card. And so this is a card that actually cracked out of a PSA 9 case to get signed earlier in the year, and I didn't get it signed, so it's still unsigned. But this is just one of my favorite cards every time I see it, and this is the Expedition Reverse Totodile, where he's chasing the Oddish. And literally, like, there's so much just like happening. Like the Totodile is happy because it can be, Oddish is scared as whatever, and then he just running away. And every time I see this card, I just think it's so cool. And so you got the reverse hollow. That's one of those cards when I have 4 or 5 PSA 9 extras. Sometimes I just don't list them. I'm just like, I kind of like this card. Let's just sit on a couple. And it's just like one of those. It hits the artwork. It's a Rita, and like getting a Charizard sign would be way more valuable and probably worth it financially. But like getting this card signed would mean so much more as far as like my collecting experience when it comes to collecting Expedition or building a set. So There's very few cards out there I think that just hit all those marbles, and that's just one of them.
That Totodile kind of reminds me of like the anime Totodile. I don't know if you how far you watched into the anime, but Ash's Totodile was very was a very happy monster. He was just constantly dancing and dancing around on one foot. But when it came time to like battle, he was all up in it. But it was just like it was very go lucky. He probably had to like in terms of like, all the Pokemon that have ever appeared in the show, probably one of the biggest personalities out there. So that's what I think of when I see that card. So just as a bonus card, since you brought that Totodile, you're talking about cards that like it's not like the blue chip value of the card. You just kind of like looking at them. I have a card as well. I have a Mudkip here. This is a Pokepark
Ooh,
Mudkip.
it's got some value.
I don't know. I have no idea what this card's worth. I just like the very whimsical artwork on it. He's kind of just like chilling there in the like the lake or the pond right there. Like kind of I don't know. When I think of a Mudkip, I think of them with like that goofy face going on. But anyways, so yeah, that is Collector's Corner. With that comes the end of Next Gen TCG episode 13. Maximizing your profits. Let us know what your guys' feedback are. If we said something that you don't agree with, we are open to discussing it with you guys in the next episode. What we say is not the end all and be all for everything. That's just our personal opinion. And anytime you talk about like investment strategies and making money, everyone like butts. Everyone has an opinion. Some people like everyone has a butt, and the other end of that saying some of them are full of what. Anyways, I'm just saying like we are always open to hearing what other people's opinions are, and we can discuss it if we feel like it's worth a discussion. But yeah, what you have any closing statements for this week?
Tell me how wrong I am. I want to hear it. Tell me everything I said that's wrong. I love the feedback, and I think there were a couple comments one time that they were just pushing back on like a strategy or something I've gone through, and it's like it's cool to see because everyone has a different opinion. Like some of the highest performing card shops and TCG operations out there, like don't interact in the same circles that a lot of us do. And so it's always cool to broaden your scope and broaden your horizon and see what other people are doing. And I don't think people realize how big all this stuff is. Like there's space for everyone to operate. There's space for everyone to have fun and collect. There's space for everyone to make their own plays. And like you're just never going to hit everything, never going to figure it all out. And it's always cool just to get feedback and just see how can we improve or are there better ways to enjoy the hobby.
Have fun and keep collecting. And we will see you guys next week.
See you guys.